We are very, very happy and glad to have a guest with us this evening to talk over Te Reo Māori being used in very early texts of very early and young readers. So we would like to invite to the show an Associate Professor in Māori Studies from Victoria University. It is Associate Professor Dr Awanui Te Huia. Dr. Te Huia, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, kia ora kōrua. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Nah, anytime. And you do look like an academic with all those books behind you. It is quite impressive. We bow at your feet. We bow at your feet.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, I might just need to take some time off so that I can actually read some of them.
Unless like they're all romance novels or something, that will take the shine off just a little bit. No?
Yeah, exactly. No, actually, they're probably kids' books filled with, all the issues that we've got going on this week.
Now, we want to have a look at, like me and Chewie have talked about this a little bit, and we've played news clips and we've played, what people are saying about this, but it's great to speak to someone who's been someone quoted in the news this week about the issue. What I thought I'd start off with, if it's okay, because we're kind of getting multiple stories. We're getting Erica Stanford Mark 1 saying it's just one book out of 75. And then that was on Sunday. And then last night we heard that this decision was made in October of last year for all books. They're going to take Māori out of all these books. Whereas on Sunday it was just 6 words that were taken out, or it was too many. And I have been saying Erica Stanford has given an answer as to why they've done this. Now, we're not sitting here saying that the answer is valid or good or correct or accurate, which is why we want you here to find out the benefits, the pitfalls, if there are any, the goods, the bads of having Māori in readers for such young readers, especially when we as Kiwis kind of intersperse Māori in amongst our everyday language. Like I saw one today that they took out the word puku. And I'm like, I mean, who doesn't say puku to a kid? It's actually what we say. It's a New Zealand word. If it said stomach in a kid's book, you'd probably kind of go, oh, that's come from Australia. It actually is the opposite of what would happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's just play this, because this is Erica Stanford giving an answer to why they've taken Te Reo Māori out of this, as she says, one book, the educational rationale behind it. I'd like to play this and get you to respond to it.
It was one reader of 75. All of those 75 readers contain high-frequency te reo words. The issue was one around what we call scope and sequence. It's essentially when you are teaching a 5-year-old to learn to read English, you do it in a certain way. You build up sound after sound and then combination of sounds in a structured way. English is already difficult as it is, and there are a number of words that don't follow the rules you have to remember, so they're called heart words. And when you add te reo words in, they also have to be remembered as heart words, memorising the whole word, because they don't follow the same vowel sounds. And so that particular book didn't fit with the scope and sequence of all the books, and so we've sent it out to every school as a big book. It's I think the right thing to do. But what I would note at the same time as we've done this, we've also created that exact same resource for the first time ever in Te Reo Māori. We've never had a set of books for learning to read te reo in a structured, decodable way. We created those and they're available to use not only for Māori medium kura kaupapa, but also for the mainstream.
So she talks about scope and sequence. She talks about English words not following the rules. Like we can go through that. And she says because Māori words don't follow those same rules with these early learners, it's easier to not have them in there so they can learn to read. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's so much, there's so much going on that in that little clip there. But I think we're also hearing different reports, not particular to that report there about, that's one example, but we've heard of others, so it might be a part of a wider issue. I think the issue is really about where the underlying beliefs are coming from, because, we do have a very strong monolingual kind of push and a historical context in this country. And kind of if we unpack the arguments that they're making here, they actually don't really stack up against all of the literature. And, if you look at international schools, I used to teach in Japan, and kids would just pick up languages. We would play with language. We would use English and Japanese, and we've got bilingual kids. They just don't struggle. They can start to recognize, and particularly you're talking about a book with 6 words, for goodness sakes. So this is a really, it just seems quite petty, to be honest, at the minor end. And then when you're making decisions about, a whole suite of kids, this is the first year of a primary school curriculum. So when you do the count, it just doesn't really stack up. And they've also got this government goal of having 1 million speakers by 2040. People who can understand Te Reo Māori and use Te Reo Māori. And one of the goals as part of that 1 million is 150,000 Māori who are under the age of 15, who they want to be able to speak 50-50 Māori. So, they're actually kind of negating their own self-set goals by doing these kinds of things. So, I think if we go back to the idea of, translanguaging is just a proven theory that you can play with language, you can, I think they've gone with this, with that sequencing model. But we've actually seen, Waikato University have got researchers working there that have said it's not an issue. We've also heard from Canterbury University who have done other research. Some of my colleagues like Dr. Vinnie Olsen-Reeder and Dr. Corinne Seals, they've done translanguaging research with children in Punareo. And this is both Pākehā students and Māori students. They can handle languages much more easily than I think a lot of our older kind of people that are probably around these decision-making tables have been exposed to language. Like, our kids, our generation, they just are far more likely to see Te Reo Māori around in ways that perhaps older generations who may have a little bit of fear or anxiety around how languages work, that's perhaps informing some of their own decision makings and all of this kind of, what they like to call unconscious bias. Other people would have less polite terms about, what's actually going on there. And so I'll leave that to both of you to put into those words. But, as somebody that needs to be a bit tidier with my language, I think it's not great.
Chewie, I think she's saying we're a bit rude with our words. Hey, just one clarity for people watching: translanguaging, meaning moving between multiple languages, is just a definition of that. Translanguaging. Yeah.
It's just a fancy term, really, just for, when people who understand multiple languages or 2 languages or more, they kind of play with languages. So that's where, you might say a word in one language from another language. And it's kind of also about identity and positioning. And so, like if you go overseas, for instance, and you're with other Kiwis, you might use Māori words to signify that you're different from other kind of international groups. And that's, I see Pākehās do that all the time when we're overseas. We will use language that is familiar to us, and Māori words are a sure point of helping to create the distinction between kind of other Westerner groups and that kind of thing. But I think it's also about, the national identity of kids and Pākehā kids as well. So it's like if they can see what Māori language is in their books, that kind of gives them a bit of an understanding so that they don't feel so kind of left out of, imagine kind of being 6 and you can't recognize very basic words. That's also like, we need to have confidence in our kids that they can kind of come up with, deal with more than one language.
And one of the problems here is, I think, in a bit of a broader picture, we're dealing with a government whose favourite sport at the moment seems to be disappearing te reo as much as they can from as many places as they can, whether it's road signs or government departments. So it sort of feels like, is this actually good educational practice, or is this just step 7 of 14 of them disappearing te reo as much as they can from as many places as they can? And that doesn't fill me with confidence of their decision making.
Yeah, I suppose it's about language status, right? So so there are a whole bunch of things that will help language revitalization take place. One of them is corpus, so how much language that we have available. So, how many words that we can recognize and understand. But one of the things is status. And so when you see te reo Māori around, or you see an Indigenous or an endangered language in sort of public context, that tells you that that language has some type of value to the community. And so what actually I perceive to be happening is, we've got a whole bunch of signposts that they're doing. So they're really targeting kind of language status in lots of ways. But the trouble with this new one is that the fact that it's based in education, it just has the same ringtone as all of the other ways in which te reo Māori has been suppressed in our education system. So, we see some real stark similarities in what's happening in this context and what's happened in the past, continually across generations. So that's where it gets to get, a little bit, uncomfortable.
Yeah. Chewie, sir, jump in.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you mention the fact that learning other languages early has a net benefit for all learning afterwards. And it just baffles me that the Minister for Education seems to have missed that quite extensively researched point. There's no way that she could be unaware of it, right? In your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, with a whole ministry and, with people in those ministries who have, they've got multiple good degrees. They are educated people who are informing the decisions that are being made. So, I mean, I think this is political. I don't think that it's founded on any principles of research or education. Again, I think it's just going back to signposting, and it's about language status and what they are trying to communicate to their voters is also probably likely to be at the crux of potentially what's happening here with this decision.
You don't think that there could be like a gas leak at the ministry and everybody's just doesn't know what's going on anymore? You think it's more intentional than that?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak for them, but I think that, it's not like you lose, when a new government comes in, the people who are working in those departments, they come with the government. So these are the same people who have made some really excellent decisions for Māori education in the past. So it's, for them to just do a 180, that's probably not what's going on. But without being inside, the building, it's hard for me to kind of unpack without doing a whole bunch of OIAs. And, is that what you want to do on your lunch break?
Where we saw you speaking today was in the article, Cutting Kupu Māori in Books Does More Harm Than Good. I want to ask you about harm in a second, but something that you've just said about being political, it's reminded me of this paragraph here, and I'll explain why at the end. So this is a paragraph out of the One News story. The minister made notes on the report, including one that said, so this is from the minister, this is from Erica Stanford. Interestingly, I asked Kura leaders if they would accept English words in te reo Māori decodable books, and they said no. So it would be consistent to keep one language only in very early year 1 decodable books, except for names. Now, on some level, I am possibly being a bit dramatic here. That kind of sounds like, why isn't there a day for straight people? Like if they can have it their way, just all Māori, then we should be able to have it our way, which is just all English. Now it's a bit of a nicky way to think about it and think, but it does seem a little bit like Erica Stanford saying, but if Māori, if kura leaders are saying no English in Māori books, then surely logic must dictate no Māori in English books. You know what I mean? It feels like it's got something to it. It's a bit icky.
Yeah. I think it's just a real lack of understanding about how endangered languages need to operate in order for them to survive. This is about the survival of our language. So the fact that we have these very few spaces in our society where Te Reo Māori is the only language that we're trying to encourage. And we're talking about 3% of Māori children. You know, these are very small, limited these are confined spaces where Te Reo Māori is able to be used. And, you know, even within that, it's just crazy to think that you could make that same comparison, because these are just not equal arguments. You know, our kids see English everywhere. You know, English is a dominant language of the globe. It just seems crazy to think that, you know, there's any comparison that can be made between those answers. And, you know, if they looked at any other examples of endangered languages, you know, look at Gaelic, look at any of you know, the languages that are trying to revive themselves, they would be making the exact same decisions in order to create some safety around the language. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, after we're finished here, I'll send you an interview we did. We spoke to the Welsh Language Commissioner about revitalising, because we asked the same question: what are other countries that have a dominant English language but a Indigenous language other than doing? And I looked at it quite heavily, and it's a pretty ugly find. But what we found is that for colonised countries whose Indigenous language we could call white, like in Wales or in Scotland or stuff, then they have rules and laws around making the Indigenous language first, literally on road signs and stuff. And in the colonised countries where the Indigenous language could be classified as brown, they're the ones that I'm still minimising it to this day. And that's what I've personally done. That gone around the world, literally spoken to the Welsh Language Commissioner, and that's what we found. And it's pretty revolting. Pretty revolting.
Yep. There's a whole stream of things I could say in response to that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that's the beauty, and partly, you know, one of the things that I'd encourage your audience to think about is what is the role of Pākehā? You know, I'm a Pākehā as well. I'm half Pākehā, and so I like to talk to, you know, my Pākehā people and say, you know, how do we do this? How do we create opportunities to push back against some of these really, damaging things that are happening for Te Reo Māori and for Māori people, because that lightens the load. And, you know, watching one of your episodes, perhaps it was last night's, the one with, Dr. Professor Margaret Mutu, she was talking about some, you know, similar things around, we do need our allies. We need people pushing back so that it relieves us of some of the weight that we're carrying as Indigenous people in fighting for, you know, just the basics, really. And, you know, this is going to be great for all of us. If we had a bilingual country, imagine the beauty that could be, you know, amongst us all. We can all we would all be able to see a whole nother worldview that's specific, that's located here where we've all grown up. So it's really just thinking about what's the potential for a better future. What's the potential for, we probably all went to school around the same time. We would have had a similar exposure to Te Reo Māori or not, and so we kind of I joke with some of my students who come into Te Reo Māori classes, and, we go through counting from 1 to 10, we go through the colours, and I say, oh, was that, and we all joke that that's probably the extent of their Reo Māori education. And so, we want to be better than that, and that starts from age 5, and actually it starts from the womb, because as soon as children have ears, they hear, they can start to differentiate languages, they can learn the differentiation between mum's voice and whoever is around them.
Yeah. Just super quick to wrap up, and thank you for giving us some time. I know we're pretty much done, and you've had a long day. But we have talked about, in the article that we featured there, talked about the harm that this could cause. Like the harm outweighs the good, other way around. But we've talked a bit about educationally and how it actually helps in that. I was also wondering if you'd like to speak to the idea of, culturally, what is this teaching our 5-year-olds culturally about what this, you were talking about this way we speak and taking it around the world. Like I used to do talkback back in the day on News Talk ZB. And I would often say the only thing that really identifies us as Kiwis, the only thing that's really unique to us compared to South Africa, compared to Australia, compared to other colonized majority, Caucasian countries now, is the Māori culture. So it's sort of a part of all of our stories because we're all a part of the country. And I'm wondering if you've got any thoughts around what this does culturally. What is this teaching kids? Forget about being academically, but what does it say to them about what their now teachers have to put foot in front of them with this this part of our country that's unique to us?
Yeah, it's about values really, and we know that mainstream education curriculum is being used as a tool of assimilation. So that's, where we sort of prioritize what it means to be, Pākehā identity becomes, the dominant identity. So basically what we're trying to do is what would be the preference is for all children in New Zealand to see Te Reo Māori as a normal language, as a language that they can feel like they have some understanding of, and that it's not something that's, that they need to be fearful of or anxious about using. All of the hang-ups that, that a lot of adults are dealing with, if we can kind of introduce it really normally at age 5, I've got a 5-year-old, she would, when you start to introduce new concepts to them, they pick it up so readily, rather than kind of waiting till we're kind of overthinking everything. Let's just do it while they're young, and allow them to have that that freedom to kind of make mistakes as well, because when you're 5 and you're making mistakes, that's totally normal. Don't wait until they're older than that, and when they're all self-conscious about, oh, did I say it right? Oh, it's like, oh, just let them have a go and be corrected when they're at, a normal age of being corrected as well. So but I mean, I really appreciate the mahi that you both do in terms of trying to socialise, different ideas and hopefully getting some thinking going about how we might, change some of these things, and also giving each other sort of encouragement to use Te Reo Māori outside of these kind of institutions. Like, for instance, I went to get some shoes today, and the lady at the counter, I wasn't sure what ethnicity she was. She heard me and the kids talking Te Reo Māori, and she checked us out completely in Te Reo Māori, which was cool. Not only was it cool for me, but it was cool for the kids, because they turned around, they're like, oh my gosh, she can speak Māori, which is just not something that they get to see as well. So, that's really cool to, it's cool to see, it being normalised.
That's very cool. Chewie, anything you want to ask before we wrap up? Thank you so much for your time tonight, Awanui.
Yeah, no worries.
Nothing specific. I think we've covered everything that just really shows that the position that Erica Stanford's taking here is just built on a hill of nonsense, and backed up by quite a bit of ignorance. So hopefully people like ourselves see straight through that. Yeah.
Cool,
man. Dr Awanui Te Huia, Associate Professor in Māori Studies from Victoria University. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. And I guess it's time for bed now, eh?
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much.
All the best.
Okay.
Cheers then.
Thank you.